I'm lost for words. That John Cena biopic was not what I expected. Welcome and thank you very much for checking out my review of The Invisible Man, directed by Leigh Whannell and starring Elisabeth Moss. And we follow Cecilia, whose abusive ex's apparent suicide leaves her with his fortune, but she suspects his death to be a hoax. And after a few weird things starting to happen, things that she cannot see why they are happening or how they are happening, she starts to suspect that he has found a way to turn himself invisible. Hence the title of this film. Leigh Whannell has been a guy who has been on my radar for a while. Not necessarily as a director, because I always knew him as Adam from the first Saw. Only years after being a fan of that movie, I learned that he was also working behind the camera on it. And a few years ago, he did Upgrade, a very inventive film in terms of the camera work, and a lot of that is brought into here. Whannell directs the camera very vibrantly. He adds a lot of dynamism into this film and how it looks, how it's shot. The camera just never stops. It's always engaging. And because you are following this story by the lens that he is telling it with, it feels very tense at all times. Elisabeth Moss is freaking out because she can't see this, she can't explain it to nobody because nobody will believe her logically. And what helps Whannell with creating tension is by just placing the camera shooting at a corner in a room, at an open door, at a corridor, an empty hallway, an empty attic, just empty places where nothing is going to be. A lot of it is wide shots, so you're just looking around the room to see if anything moves, if you see him stumbling against something, if you see if anything changes at all, if he picks up a knife or whatever. And so a lot of the film becomes engaging in that sense because the film knows you are sure about what you want to see, even though you are not going to see it and you know you are not going to see anything. You are so ahead of the character that automatically engages you in being ahead of her and continuously being ahead of her because you are sure of what is going on. She is not, until a certain point, of course. And Elisabeth Moss is fantastic in this film. She's a very easy character to root for. She's a character that feels in a lot of ways worthless. She feels like she's being controlled. She feels like somebody is constantly watching her. And a lot of those feelings are very common. I'm sure a lot of us have felt either one or several of those quote-unquote symptoms throughout our lives. And she is fan-fucking-tastic in this role. She carries this film like a champ. The performances in general are really good, but this really is her film. I would congratulate the guy who plays the Invisible Man, but he doesn't play the Invisible Man for that long in the film. From the very first scene where it is Elisabeth Moss trying to escape her home during the night, it's extremely tense. The music works extremely well. And you learn a lot in this first scene with no dialogue, just seeing her trying to escape home and how she's trying to escape and why she's doing certain things that she's trying to do. And the first half of the film really keeps that engaging aspect on the full front. And that tense aspect is always there. From the 1 hour mark onward, though, there is some silliness coming in just every aspect. It felt like the cracks start to show in the screenplay. It almost became a very different movie. Now, I don't want to spoil anything because I knew barely anything about this film going in. I saw the teaser trailer and that's it. So I don't want to spoil anything to anyone. There's an update to the lore, let's say, of The Invisible Man. It felt unnecessary, to be honest. I found no need for it. I thought it actually took away from the villain of the film, and inherently it turned the film very silly. There's also a big exposition dump, and this one I could talk about without spoilers because there isn't spoilers to talk about here. In the beginning of the film, once Elisabeth Moss's character escapes, she mentions how her boyfriend was very abusive. He hit her, he did a whole ton of stuff. He looked at her and he assumed she was thinking something. He controlled every aspect of her life, how she looked, what she thought, how she dressed, what she ate, when she could go out, etc. But you never see this abuse, and you just know it from one scene with people talking, which I was disappointed with. I wanted to see this character go through the grinder. Not because I want to see domestic violence in a film just for the sake of it. In a film, I don't want people to tell me stuff. I want them to show me, not tell me. And going back to the little update that they made to The Invisible Man that I'm not going to spoil, it just creates a whole ton of logic problems. There are also problems with certain things that happen in this film, namely a scene in a restaurant that apparently had no security cameras. I also want to talk about the very ending of this film, but again, I can't because I don't want to spoil anything. The very ending of this film is either really stupid and it makes absolutely no sense, or there's a missing, I won't say scene, but moment, because there's a cut in the final scene of the film that just doesn't add up with what I saw. Unfortunately, that's all I can mention about my big problem with the final scene of this film, but I want you guys to enjoy this film freely. I don't want to be the guy who spoils you what happens in this film. I won't be the guy who spoils you what happens in this film. Through creative direction, ingenious camera work, and very great constant thrills and scenes filled with tension, Whannell constructs a very intense thriller led by a fantastic performance from Moss, and for the most part it delivers. I think the first half of the film is great. I think the second half is silly, but I still enjoyed it. It's just not up to par with the first one. I'm giving The Invisible Man a B-. Now, what did you think of The Invisible Man, my beautiful geekies? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what is your favorite classic Universal monster, and let me know which one you would like to see them tackle next. Thank you so much for watching. You are the best. Check out my review for the second episode of the final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and very soon I will have my review for Onward here, and many other reviews to come this coming week and weekend, and continuously, of course. I hope to see you there. So until the next video, stay beautiful, stay geeky, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video because it really helps me and the channel out. But most importantly, above everything else, forever and always, love each other and love the movies.